12th, 2020. Jessica, will you please take roll?
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prig.
Here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Wendy Kroger.
Here.
Felicita Monteblanco.
Here.
Thank you. We have no action items resulting from executive session tonight. So our next agenda item is our public hearing. The resolutions adopting an updated system development charge methodology, adopting the system development charge fee schedule, and adopting a 20-year system development charge capital improvement project list. This is the beginning of our public hearing, so I will now open the public hearing, and I will turn it over to our presenters, Janine Rustad and Deb Gillardi.
Thank you. Janine Rustad with you this evening for the final hearing on our SDC methodology. As you mentioned, Deb Gillardi, our consultant who has done a monumental job on bringing us through this very technical process, is here with me this evening. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge Peter Swinton, our urban planner, who has helped us through a lot of the technical work as well as leading the engagement work in this process. It's remarkable because Peter started on March 9th, and 2 days later we told him to go home and work, and he has learned not only who we are, how we operate, but about this very, again, technical process. So thank you, Peter. This evening, Jessica, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So this evening, we're going to give you an overview of the engagement process that we've done over the last almost year and a half, and the policy issues we have addressed during this time. We'll go over at a very high level the elements of the methodology. You've heard all this before, but since this is our hearing on adoption, we want to put this in the hearing record. And then finally, we have 3 resolutions for you to consider. So if you want to advance the slide, Jessica. For stakeholder engagement, given that we were supposed to start this engagement in March, we had to pivot very quickly to bring that engagement online. So thank you also to our IT department. What would have been the first meeting in March ended up being an email introduction with a lot of the background information on the issues that the board had seen. We then held 3 meetings with stakeholders. Those stakeholders included the Home Builders Association, and we asked the HBA to share our invites and our information with their membership. We also invited developers we've worked with, the district has worked with over the years. We invited affordable housing advocates and providers, as well as our jurisdictional partners. In addition to these 3 virtual meetings, we had a specific meeting on affordable housing this summer. And then we've had numerous one-on-one conversations, whether it was with the Home Builders Association, individual developers, and then again, affordable housing advocates and providers. So we think even in this digital realm, we have done an outstanding job. You can advance, Jessica. The board has also provided the public, this is the 8th opportunity that you are providing for the public to participate and talk to you directly. And as you know, you have received testimony over the past year. Next slide, please. We asked, or actually the board asked us to investigate 3 issues. One was residential tiering to more equitably distribute the fees for growth where they are incurred. And as you see, the methodology does include that for single family housing. You asked us to look at our level of service because we went into this not wanting to drastically increase our SDC rates, but also knowing we had not kept up with the cost of construction and land, even with our annual indices. So the one thing that, although we included all the forecasted projects for the next 20 years in the project list, with your input, we reduced the amount of the construction for recreation aquatic centers to 30%. Now that may seem like a big drop, but just as a reminder that the amount we had in our previous methodology was low. So this brought us more in line of what the actual cost will be. And then finally, affordable housing. Not only does this methodology include the provision for waivers of affordable housing, but last month you adopted the policy that implements that. Oh, and I should mention also that with non-residential SDCs, we look at that every time. We looked at it during this methodology, and with the help of Deb and her team, we have brought that more in line to make sure that non-residential growth is paying for its share, which helps alleviate the burden on the residential growth. Because this is a larger increase than non-residential growth as seen in the past, we will, at your guidance, implement that increase over 2 years. So with that, I will now turn it over to our consultant, Deb, to give the high-level overview of the technical work.
Okay, thanks, Janine. The SDC methodology at a very high level is pretty simple math. It's costs associated with serving future growth divided by the number of units to be served over the planning period, which is a 20-year period. People use parks, so the service units are people, both employees and population, resident population. We start with, as Janine said, we look at develop a project list, which is the projects that the district has identified as priority projects for increasing capacity in the system. And that can be through additional land acquisition or development of existing acres for trails and parks. Then we determine the growth share based on the level of service and the planned level of service relative to the current level of service. So a number of the categories are 100% future growth, and that's because the district is just maintaining the level of service that is currently being provided. So growth pays for that next increment to maintain the level of service. Most notably in the case of trails, once the improvements are made, the level of service will be higher than what is existing today. So that means there'll be more miles per capita of trails. And because that will result in improved level of service for existing development as well as growth, the growth share is only the cost associated with achieving that level of planned level of service for future development, and the district needs to fund a portion of those improvements through other means. You'll notice that the project list also includes some costs specifically for North Bethany. Those are the additional costs associated with land acquisition in that area. This methodology only includes one overlay area, and that is for North Bethany. The other ones that are currently included on the SDC schedule are recommended to be eliminated as part of this update. The total project list cost was about 500 million, of which a little over 400 million was determined to be growth share. Next slide, please. As I said, from there, it's pretty simple math. We take the costs, we divide it by that projected increase in population for the district as well as employment. It's important to note that in determining the allocation of the total 413 million between residential and non-residential, non-residential pays relatively less per employee than residential pays per resident. And that's because non-residential is only paying for the impact associated with employees that come into work in the district that live elsewhere. And we also recognize the fact that an employee does not have the same number of that's coming in, traveling in from out of the district, does not have the same number of hours available to utilize the parks as someone who is living in the district. So that allocation is represented in the methodology as well. We determined, as Janine said, 2 different scenarios. One, the methodology report reflects 100% the maximum allowable cost recovery associated with recreation centers. And that, so you can see those numbers there in this table. Also, you can see the reduced costs associated with funding the rec centers at 30% the eligible amount. The final column is that 30% unit cost plus a compliance charge, which the Oregon statutes allow local governments to recover the costs associated with complying with the statutes. And so that is what, there's some additional costs associated with that, as is the case in the current methodology as well. That's different than the administrative charge that's then assessed by the city and the county as the agencies that administer the charges. But those are reflected in the SDC schedule on the next slide, which Janine will discuss. I think you're muted.
Yes, I just realized I had muted myself, so my apologies. So all this technical work and engagement we did with the stakeholders, because we held stakeholder meetings on each of these topics, results in what you see in this table. So we have our current charge, which of course was just an average fee. And then we show the average fee with that administrative charge, and then also the tiering. Both the top is district-wide, and then the bottom is for North Bethany. And what you can see here is that we did, by and large, maintain revenue neutrality. The average fees have, for the district-wide, reduced slightly. North Bethany went up a little. And the smaller homes, in both cases, the fees are going down. So we think we've stuck with what we've set out to do. And I do want to mention too that statewide, this tiering method is getting a close look at as a good way to equitably distribute growth. So next slide, please. Of course, it's not just single family housing in the district. There's a lot of multifamily housing, and with the data we use, there's also a change for us in what is considered multifamily. Now, anything that is connected, so a townhome, a row home, a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, in addition to apartments and condominiums, will be considered multifamily. And as you can see, this is a 7% decrease. This is very important not only for multifamily housing, which I think we'll see a lot of growth in the next 5 years, but also for what is considered the missing middle, those attached homes, the duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, that the state and the region is looking to develop more of for folks that are at maybe 80 to 100% of the median family income. So again, something that is being looked at statewide as an example of how to be more equitable. Also, with accessory dwelling units, we decided with the board's approval to use the lowest occupancy assumption. So you can see that we're reducing that fee by a little over $2,000. And senior housing based on occupancy rates, that is also decreasing. Again, the cost per employee increasing, but we will phase that in over 2 years. Next slide, please. So that is our presentation this evening. We have 3 resolutions for you, one adopting the updated methodology, one adopting the new fees, again, to allow the city and the county time to update their programming to be able to collect the tiered fee. What you see in the resolution is the average for single family housing, which that'll be from February, and it looks like July 1, 2021 will be when we will be able to implement the tiered. And then the third resolution is adopting the capital project list. And again, 100% of all the projects that are eligible are on that list. And by presenting this to you in 3 resolutions, this will give us flexibility in the future. If you wanted to change the amount of the recreation aquatic centers, we can do that with minimal notice. We would, if it increased the fee, we do have to give notice. This also allows us to do our annual adjustments without revisiting the entire methodology. So this gives us the maximum flexibility. That's our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions. And actually, before we get there, Jessica, I just want to confirm that we do not have testimony to present from anyone in the public.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Oh, Wendy? Sorry.
I haven't said anything yet. You can't comment like that on my comment.
They have lots of comments.
I just, first of all, I wanted to, again, profusely thank staff and our consultant, Deb, for their professional, rigorous, and time-consuming work on this effort, which has taken more than a year. As you know, I recently voted against using SDC funding to accommodate affordable housing waivers. I reiterate, however, that I agree with those who believe we have an affordable housing problem in our community. I continue to be concerned about how we will mitigate taking SDC funds away from our own future building needs. However, the new policy was passed by majority board vote last month. Part of the larger SDC methodology update that we're seeing in Hull tonight includes a new tiering approach, a more appropriate fee schedule, more realistic levels of service, and a more current 20-year SDC capital improvements project list. And I support the work done in each of these areas. I'm also cognizant of the statewide scrutiny of SDCs, and that this is an attempt on THPRD's part to serve as an example of how to create a more equitable approach to SDCs. Therefore, even though I do not support the earlier portion of the resolution aimed at affordable housing waivers, I do support the resolution as a whole. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Any other board members with questions or comments? Felicita.
Hi there. Yeah, I feel like Wendy used the perfect word, rigorous. So thank you, Deb, and thank you, Janine, and the other staffer that you mentioned, whose name I'm forgetting, I apologize. But thank you to everyone who worked on this super exciting work. And I just appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into it. And yeah, much appreciation. I know it was a ton of work, and I think that we had amazing discussions. I think that we were super proactive in how we engaged the community, and we did receive lots of feedback, which helped us form something that I think most of us are pretty excited about. So yay, thank you.
Thank you, Felicita. Heidi.
Well, of course, thank you again to the staff, but also I thank my board peers, because I know we've all learned a lot through this process. And I want to thank us for being open to having dissenting voices and, thoughts and ideas that don't all, stand along the party line. I think that's really important for us as a board. So I want us to reflect on this opportunity and what we've gone through the last year as we move forward too as board colleagues. And Wendy, thank you for your comments tonight as well. As our prior meeting, it's helpful to understand where we're all coming from, and we're not always going to agree, but because we look at it with different lenses. But I appreciate working with each of you, and of course to the entire team that has been working on this, from staff and our consultants. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Tia, do you have anything to add?
Nope, I'm glad this has gone and it passed and we are moving forward, and I'm so thankful for the staff's work, and I think it's a great thing that our district is doing for affordable housing, and I think it's fair and it's exciting, and congratulations for all the work, and yay.
Thank you, Tia. Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that was said tonight, and I think the other thing that has just been so impressive to me is the amount of public outreach that was done and all of the collaborative conversations that happened. And I think that the end result is reflective of board values, is reflective of our community's values, right? And that, like, I just think that we came to such a really awesome, thorough solution to this. And it's really exciting to think that others may look at what we did in terms of this more equitable implementation with, I'm lacking the word, but the scalable, right? The kind of scaled approach. I think that's really wonderful. So thank you all. That concludes our board discussion, and I will now close the public hearing. Are there any motions?
This is Felicita. I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 2020-25, adopting an updated system development charge methodology. Resolution 2020-26, adopting the system development charge fee schedule. And Resolution 2020-27, adopting a system development charge capital project list.
This is Heidi. I second.
Thank you, Felicita. Thank you, Heidi. And Jessica, will you please take roll vote?
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes. Thank you so much. Next up is audience time, which we did not receive any audience submissions either for tonight. So we will move on to board time. Would any of my colleagues like to give an update? Heidi.
Yes, couple of updates. So with the Park Foundation, we will be meeting, our board trustees will be meeting for our quarterly meeting next week on Wednesday, but in advance of that, I had a meeting with Eileen, our executive director, to talk a little bit about moving into our holiday giving. And, unfortunately this year we will not be hosting through the foundation a holiday party, but we would love to ask that folks who've been invited to that, and we will be sending invitations out, so you should all receive something here in the next few weeks after our trustee meeting, related to how we would request for giving coming into the holiday season. We know there's a lot of great need with the patrons and families in our community. So we'll be talking about that this next week, along with other agenda items, and talking about how the board has, or how the district has responded to COVID. In addition to that, just a quick update about the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee. It's been really great because Bruce has been taking us through the Natural Resources Functional Plan. And again, if you haven't looked through it, it's fascinating. And this last week, we had an opportunity, or last month, we had an opportunity to talk a little bit about how that functional plan, the focus on community engagement and habitat management, and looking at the different metro maps and demonstrating the real world application of connectivity that we strive for within the district. So I've just been really grateful for those rich discussions and learning as it relates to the functional plan. So thank you for leading those discussions, Bruce, and Sherry for being the chair of that. Also, I would love to just mention there have been a lot of great experiences that folks on our committee have had within our nature and trails. And so we always do an update, and there's some great little tidbits of, you know, people's experiences from our committees as it relates to their experience there. So I will leave it at that. The only other thing I would say is a couple of people reached out to me who were interested in the audit committee or the budget committee. I think it was budget committee. And so had a couple conversations with community folks about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Felicita?
That's exciting about the budget committee. Thank you, Heidi. And I was thinking earlier today how the holiday party probably won't be happening. I hope the silver lining is that means Jessica gets a chill Friday night in December. So a few updates from me. I attended, I know Janine's going to talk about this, but I attended the West Side Trail Bridge community conversation. And this is, my understanding is it's the first time that they've done that the district has done something like this community engagement wise via Teams. So I thought it was great. I thought it was super inclusive and it was easy to ask questions, super informative. So I know Janine's going to talk about it, but I wanted to give kudos. Two, I participated in the Talking Walls committee conversation on Monday. Major thanks to Holly and Lulu and all the team that is working on that. I know we're all on Facebook, so you probably saw the invitation and promotion for the event on Sunday. I'll just say that what the artists came up with are just truly moving. It's a focus on our Native American heritage, and there's one in particular that highlights indigenous voices from North, Central, and South America, and it is, I'm probably gonna cry when I see it. It's amazing. So I just really appreciate all the work there as that's been happening, and I'm just so excited for more, and I'm so excited for our patrons to see that this is a value and show that we're not only living it, but we're showing them via art that this is a value of ours. And then finally, since Veterans Day was yesterday, I know we have several staff that are veterans, so thank you for your service very, very much. And that's it.
Thank you, Felicita. Wendy?
Get all my buttons done here. Thank you very much. I wanted to give just a couple of updates. One is the Defined Benefit Pension Committee has met virtually, and the last meeting was a busy one, as many of them are. We discussed plan asset updates, the IAP spinoff status, investment policy itself, the voluntary the voluntary account program spinoff, fiduciary delegation charter update, and some participant appeals. Secondly, with regard to the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee, which met after the Joint Advisory Committee meeting on October 21st, there was quite a bit of discussion about the Jackie Hewson Dog Run review, and the Advisory Committee did recommend that we move ahead making that a permanent project at Jackie Hewson. Secondly, the committee is working diligently on the Bark Day Potty, and I want you to know I'm eating dinner. It's Bark Thins in honor of the Bark Day Potty. That's going to be Saturday, November 14th. It's this coming Saturday at Ridgewood Park, and it's a pop-up dog run event from 11 to 2, and there'll be other dog-friendly events. Ashley, I hope you can go. The park is located at the southeast corner of Highway 217 and Southwest Wilshire Street. And this is one of the areas that the advisory committee is reviewing with the idea of making a recommendation next year on the next couple of dog runs or dog parks. They're hoping to make recommendations on 2 a year, and this will be one of theirs to install in the district this next year, hoping that it works out. So I invite you to come if you can on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Felicita mentioned the Greenway Park Talking Walls project, and Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee are very involved in that as well. I have, like Felicita mentioned, I have seen a couple of the potential drawings, and I have to say they are just stunning. And so since it's my neighborhood, I'm so excited that this is going to be very close by. So again, that's Sunday, and I think it's 10 to 2. and hopefully it won't be raining too hard, but a good portion of what the project involves is going to be undercover, so that should help. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention was on a personal note. I was waiting until the election in November was over before I made a personal decision about what I might be doing with regard to the May election. My position is one of 3, as we all know, that's up for re-election. I have to say this has been absolutely a wonderful, wonderful experience. On the other hand, I will say that 2020 has been not quite what I would have hoped for any of us on a lot of levels. I think it's time to let everybody know whether I will or won't run again. My heart says absolutely I will. My body says I can't. And I have to listen to that. So I will say that it has been an experience of a lifetime. I have so appreciated getting to know staff, work on projects that are so important to me. Being part of this community has been absolutely incredibly validating to me. I would hope, and I know that, you know, Felicity, you will do what you want to do, and I give you great credit for that. But I'm hoping that Ashley, you will also consider running again. I think you've been a really outstanding president. I think that we can benefit from your experience, and I think that whatever you can bring to us, we will value. And so I'm hoping that you will run. I wish I could, but I think it's time. I'm a slow learner. Should I have started this 20 years ago? Absolutely, but I didn't. So with that, I will say that I will happily and gladly serve out the remainder of my term and do everything I can for the district within that time and going forward. So thank you again very much for the experience.
Wendy, thank you so much. I'm going to give Tia a chance, and then I've got plenty to say.
Oh my goodness, what do I even say after that? Wendy, thank you. I mean, your term is not up, so there's plenty of time to get lots of stuff done, but I thoroughly enjoyed having you on this board, and it's not an end yet, so this is kind of a little bit shocking. If you change your mind, there's still time, but thank you for all that you've done and your passion. And I like to think that each of us kind of have a role on this board. And whenever I think of you, for some reason, you are always the cheerleader in my head because you are always cheering people on with a smile on your face and just always so positive. So thank you for all that you've brought over serving together for the last year or so. But as far as my updates, I don't have very much. I did try to go to the Halloween parade drive-through thing with our kids, but unfortunately the line was long and we had a 5-year-old who really had to go pee. So we had to hop out, but it was a great reason to hop out. So it seems like our community really loved all of the events that we've been hosting, and so hopefully we can do more because it sounds like this is something that's in demand that we can provide for people. The programs and events did meet. We had a great presentation by our fitness specialist, Jen Smurl, I believe is her last name. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She just gave a great update of all the things that we're doing and all the creative ideas that our fitness group is doing, including Garden Home is creating equipment rental packages since we're not utilizing Garden Home right now, so people can rent out different equipment and stuff to take home, which I think is just so great that we're still utilizing all the stuff that we have and allowing people to continue their fitness journey even though they have to stay at home. There's also they started an all-inclusive middle school cross-country training program, which is great. And then we had more updates about our out of school and our mobile rec again, which is amazing for all the things that we're trying to do for all of our students. And as a mom of 3 little kids at home, it is great to have all these opportunities to still attend to. We also talked about some more final details on our welcoming packet that we've been working on, and how and where we would like to distribute it. And then Holly and her amazing team and creative people are going to make it look beautiful, and hopefully sooner than later we can bring a packet to show everyone and get them printed so that people still know what we offer, and all the people new to our district will know where they can find us and what they can do. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tia. Okay, first, I would just like to thank staff for all you did for us in October. We had 3 weeks of back-to-back meetings, and I know that you all do so much to make those meetings a success for us. So thank you, from our regular meeting to the joint advisory, and then the advisory committee meetings, and then our retreat. And I just thank you, because I know you do so much for us. I'm super excited about Jackie Hewson. I have the dog potty on my calendar. So I'm hoping to make it because it sounds really fun. I think our dogs would enjoy it. Heidi, thank you for the update on the foundation. Due to scheduling, we will probably not have them on the agenda until January. So please do let us know how, as a board, we can help amplify the message of the foundation, right? And help bring in some end of year cheer for the foundation. I also saw that we are doing a gift card drive this year. So we can all share that message as well, since we can't do our normal giving trees. Wendy, thank you. I feel like your message was so final, but like Tia said, we've got lots of work to do and time to do it in. And I also attended Halloween, our drive-through trick-or-treating, and I do know, right, that there was some struggles with traffic and whatnot, but it was such a fun event. People were so happy to be participating, and I just thought it was such an awesome way for us to create a Halloween, special event, given everything going on. So I think lots of people would look forward to it again, maybe even in a non-COVID time. It was such a cool event. So thank you to everyone that was involved in that as well. Okay, that concludes board time. So we are now on to the consent agenda.
Madam President, this is Wendy. I have a motion. I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I second. This is Lisa.
Thank you. Jessica, can you please take a roll vote?
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prick.
Yes. Thank you so much. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is the general manager's report.
Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate it, Board President. We've got an update coming from Bruce here. I did want to make one comment, well, actually 2 items just real quickly before we move into the Park Ambassador and Park Ranger update. And that is that the budget committee process, we will be bringing, there were 9 individuals, and we will be bringing those to the board via the scoring matrix that you've traditionally used in the past. And then depending on the makeup of the responses from the board, then we'll move in the direction of whatever, whether it's an interview or formal approval by the board for the positions that are open. And lastly, I'm working on work session topics with Ashley, Board President Ashley, and we will finalize kind of a schedule over the next couple months. As early as December, we will be talking, hopefully with the board in a work session format for the legislative platform for this 2021 season that will open soon. And one of the items there is coincidentally will be Janine will be reporting on some SDC committee work that she's involved in, and talking a little bit about what we're hearing of interest out there legislatively, and of course some of the responses to some of the work we've done, particularly when it comes to the affordable housing side, which has been very positive. And as we know, we were not the inception of some of this work on the SDC side, but we've definitely taken it and amplified the leveraged approach, and I think it's been well received across the state as well. But we'll hear more from Janine on that subject. So with that, we'll move Bruce this way, please.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Barbrash, your Nature and Trails Manager, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about what rangers and park ambassadors have been doing out in the parks to help our visitors have a great time through this very unusual time. Next slide, please. So the Nature and Trails field team has been in continuous operation since the pandemic started. They had the same responsibilities they've always had to provide stewardship, to connect people to natural areas through trails, and to make sure that we've got a safe and welcoming environment. But they had to change their approach a little bit in recent times. They've continued to adapt to new regulations and try to communicate to our patrons things that might help them have a positive experience out in the parks. And our park rangers in particular are very much the public face of the department. I'm always around in one form or another, these days more electronic, but they're out on the street, in the parks, on the trails on an almost daily basis, 7 days a week. Next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. We've had a lot more visitors than normal, and fortunately, most of those visitors are excited to be there. They're really polite and well behaved, and they're super grateful that the Park District is continued to have trails and natural areas open to them. There's a lot of folks who said this is the place I go to get away from it all, and they're just excited to be there. And it's really been interesting to see how staff's perception of visitor use has compared with our electronic trail counter numbers. So in the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the trends. This is a graph showing what's happening or been happening at the Cooper Mountain Nature Park in the south part of the district. And the top line you see there in orange, that is the current trail counter numbers. The blue line you see below is an average of the last 3 years. And I think this shows you what we've seen across the district, that we're having about double the normal number of users. And that's been pretty consistent throughout the entire, last 6-9 months. We had a dip on the far side of the graph, and that's just as a result of all the smoke and poor air quality we had. The initial numbers, which we haven't finished processing for October, are showing a definite rebound in numbers. Next slide, please. It's interesting to note that at the West Side Trail, which is one of our busier sites, we've also seen really large numbers. And West Side Trail is different than Cooper in the sense that folks drive to Cooper Mountain Nature Park, but at West Side Trail, it's a lot of people just coming out of their house, exploring their neighborhood. And I think these numbers really speak to the fact this is a critical service that the Park District provides. And I'm just thrilled, that we have the numbers and that people have turned to us in this time, and that we're really, really, really important to them. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, along with all those visitors and a lot of the normal recreation, social, school, and other things that that folks engage in, we've also had a little bit of unpleasant things that we've had to deal with. We've seen a fair amount more vandalism than normal. We've seen almost double the amount of trash. So in a typical week, a park ranger or a park part-time technician would go out and empty garbage cans one time, and it would take roughly one staff person an entire day to do this. Now we're seeing so much garbage that we have to go out 2 full days each week in order to keep up with the garbage. What we try and avoid is the situation you see in the picture on the right. We're always trying to stay ahead of garbage so it's sanitary, it looks neat, and it doesn't get critters involved in our trash. Next slide, please. Staff have been super creative about how they're getting the work done. We're down compared to the normal number of staff we have, and we've got some COVID safety protocols that have really challenged staff to think, how do we do these important things? How do we maintain things? How do we keep the focus on visitors, maybe a little bit less on habitat than normal, and yet still do all those great things? So we've got social distancing practices in place. We've got masks. We've got cleaning protocols. We've got folks in their own vehicles, whole variety of things that really help us to serve the public and be creative. Next slide. One really great thing that's happened is we've had a group of volunteers who have stepped up and said, hey, we're interested and willing to go out and serve the public. Strange times, we're a little bit cautious, but we're excited to serve. And so I've had about 10 volunteers who have regularly gone out to visit some of our higher use parks. And what they do is they walk trails, they stand at entry points, they greet visitors from an appropriate distance. And what they do is they really provide a positive experience, and a person there is saying, we're here to help you have a good time. So that means if a person shows up at a nature park where we don't allow dogs, we've got a flyer handy that says, here's a bunch of other places right nearby where you can take your dog. Or if the trail looks too crowded, they might say, hey, you might want to investigate this direction. They are also super helpful for staff because they see hotspots and they let us know areas that we might want to pay a little extra attention to. Next slide, please. The ambassadors have also been noted by the public, and we get a lot of positive comments from the public about them. I also am lucky to get one of our ambassadors who loves taking pictures. And so I'm always getting these really heartwarming scenes. For example, on the right, this is a preschool group that encountered one of our ambassadors, and they wanted to play with the dog. And the dog is like a big friend maker out there. It's other dog walkers will approach her, and kids love to, and they all keep the appropriate social distance, but it's just been great to see the variety of volunteers and the variety of really positive interactions we can provide, and it's nice that the community supports us back. They are still going through this cooler, rainy season, a little bit less often, but they're still out there providing information and walking trails and visiting parks, so it's really wonderful. Next slide, please. So overall, we're Nature and Trails Department still out there. Park rangers are meeting the mission and the demand that's there. We continue to evaluate what's the best way with the resources we have to provide the service. And even in strange times, we're finding ways to enjoy doing it. The scene on the right is one of our staff meetings, and we've figured out a way to get everybody to see each other at one time, and that's been kind of fun too. So that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Do any of my colleagues have questions or comments? Felicita?
Bruce, it's so nice to see your face. Thank you for all your hard work. I'm definitely one of the folks who is using the trails more than ever. I'm a creature of habit, so I have a really, I always go to the same one. I always go to Willow Creek Greenway because I love it. It's really different terrains, I guess, which I really like. Foresty, open. So thank you for all your work. With regards to the ambassador program, I'm curious if any of our current ambassadors bring language skills, and if this is something you want to expand upon, lessons learned. It seems very cool. So just anything else you'd like to share about that going into the future?
One of the things we need to think about just is how we want to move forward, if we want to move forward with expanding or contracting the program. We don't have any ambassadors at the current time that I know of who speak other languages than English, but it's certainly something to think about. I figure we're going to kind of get through a little bit more of the winter, and as we get towards spring, we'll try and figure out, do we want to expand this? Do we want to change it in some way? we have a new community engagement ranger who is a Spanish speaker, and I'm thinking she will take a lead with the program, and fresh eyes, fresh energy, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to the ambassadors who are volunteering their time very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question, Bruce, and I apologize if I missed this, about how much time do we have ambassadors out on the trails in like a week?
It does vary a lot because they are volunteers, but during the peak time during the summer, I had folks out there about 4 days out of 7. And they work shifts of roughly 2 to 4 hours, depending on the weather and their temperament.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay, thank you so much, Bruce.
You're welcome.
All right, and our next agenda item is, or do we have anything else from the general manager's report?
Yeah, we have one other item. Janine was going to report, please.
Great, and sorry, I just saw Wendy's hand is up.
Wendy, you might be on mute.
Oh,
if you're
yes, I'm
talking.
sorry. I was just going to ask that, yes, I wanted to see Janine's report, and I had just a couple of questions, but I am very happy to wait till after her report.
Okay.
Thank you. So Janine Rustad with you again to talk about something fun. And I just feel so privileged that I'm talking about something that isn't very dry and technical. So I'm here this evening to give you an update on the West Side Trail Bridge, bicycle pedestrian bridge over Highway 26, our concept design. Next slide, please, Jessica. We were awarded a grant from Metro a couple years ago to do a concept design, about a 30% design of this bridge, and get a cost estimate of what the bridge will cost so that we can go forward to seek financing. Our study area is between Southwest Greenbrier to the south and Northwest Cornell to the north. I wanted to start with this zoomed out map just to mention that we are also seeking funding to do an alternative study for the trail from the corner of Southwest 158th and Walker Road up to the Southern Bridge Landing. And then we're also looking for funding to do a design of this remaining section to the north here. Next slide, please. Even without those connections, this bridge is going to, the trail connections, I should say, this bridge is going to be very important in connecting people in their homes to jobs. We have major employers in the area, retail, recreation, of course, and schools. Next slide, please. At the outset of the project, we wanted to know if we could see a mode shift from cars to bikes or walking, how much we might anticipate, and also who this bridge may serve. So to get a picture of what this may look like, our consultant used streetlight data, which uses some real-time data to give us a picture. And what we found is there is the opportunity on some short trips, which are 3 miles or less, that are currently in the car because there is not a safe way to walk or bike over Highway 26 without going majorly out of distance. And an example of some of those trips are between Sunset High School and HMT, our big campus here to the south, but also between students that live south of the highway but attend Sunset High School. Another finding from the streetlight data is that this bridge will serve and benefit individuals of lower income and communities of color. Next slide. Moving into our field studies, we were a bit delayed being able to get our consultants in the field because of COVID, but we did get everybody out there and we did get those wrapped up. And what you're going to see over the next few slides is what our consultant calls threading the needle, because we have a few challenges we'll have to overcome with this bridge. Next slide, please. When we started out, we were aware that there was a wetland area to the north of the highway. The trail and the bridge is planned to go in the BPA corridor. That wetland, which is just over an acre, does encroach into the corridor. There's also a stream associated with that wetland. And what we found in our first stakeholder meeting is that the culvert where the stream goes under the highway, that gets backed up. And it gets backed up to the point where the water encroaches into Columbia Sportswear's parking lot. And you'll see a slide of that area soon. So next slide, please. The good news on vegetation and biological resources is that there is no significant vegetation or habitat, and there are no biological resources. So that was a bit of good news from the field studies. Next slide, please. Likewise, there was no surprises with historic era properties. The only historic properties are the BPA power lines themselves, the highway, and then an apartment complex nearby. And then archaeology, we had some shovel test pits done throughout the corridor in the study area, and the recommendation is no further study required. Next slide, please. So these are some views looking north and south. Of course, the big challenges here are the BPA power lines themselves. And then on both the north and the south of the highway, we have PGE power lines going perpendicular to the BPA corridor. There's also a natural gas transmission line, and we do have requirements to stay a certain distance from all of these infrastructure pieces. So next slide, please. Another challenge that we have is making grade, making sure that this bridge is ADA compliant. And there is a change in grade from the south of the highway to the north, and we need to hit Columbia Way at grade. This cross-section is a bit exaggerated. They're 5-foot intervals, but it does give you that feel of the challenge we have here. Now, the good news is with some preliminary investigation, this is the bottom of the bridge. We may be able to lower that to decrease the slope of the bridge and abutments. But again, this is another one of our challenges. Next slide, please. So these show the area to the north, the grade that we're trying to meet to get to Columbia Way. And again, this is the wetland with the stream coming through. And when that culvert backs up, this is where the water gets to. We want to make sure we're working with Columbia Sportswear as well as ODOT to ensure that we resolve those issues with the culvert so that the trail, which eventually will make its way through this parking lot, remains dry and usable throughout the year. Next slide. We're starting to get into the really fun part of this project, which is the design of the bridge. Good news out of studies is that the spans we're looking at are fairly typical, and many bridge types will fit this site, even with the constraints of the power lines and the wetlands and the stream. So over the next few months, we will further investigate the types of bridges that may work. And we did get some questions at the community meeting about, are we looking at aesthetics or is cost the most important factor in choosing a bridge type? And I always answer this question by saying yes. This is going to be an iconic bridge. There's not many. This is one of 2 in the area over Highway 26, but we do have to be fiscally responsible with money because we will have to find some outside funding for this bridge. Next slide, please. So public engagement, another project where we had to pivot and bring everything virtual. We have a wonderful website. So thank you to our communications team and IT team for that. We did our first virtual property owner and stakeholder agency meeting in September. For us, it's very important that we're bringing the adjacent property owners and the agencies along with us through this project to get their buy-in. With ODOT and BPA, because these are non-federal funds that we're using for the design, we're not under contract with them. So they're really doing us a favor by looking over documentation and hopefully if there's any red flags, raising them. We also had our first virtual community meeting, and thank you, Felicita, for attending. I think that our community really appreciates seeing the interest of everyone and the board hearing their concerns. With that community meeting, the video is on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it if you want. And we have a survey that's open through November 22nd. Of course, we're giving you the update. We have the website, and we will have ongoing community engagement, and we will make sure that we hit the Nature and Trails Committee with those designs. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Janine. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Tia.
Thanks for the presentation, Janine. So I just want to double check. We're gonna be building around the power lines or through the power. We're not moving power lines or anything. Is that correct?
That is to be determined.
Oh, okay.
We may, looking at some of those PG, it might be the most cost-effective way, but still left to be seen.
Okay.
And that's why we're having some special meetings with the agencies.
Okay, perfect. And then is this bridge going to be completely owned by us, or is it in conjunction with Metro or ODOT or anybody else? Like, are we going to be responsible for all the maintenance and everything going forward with it?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Sounds good. That's the only other thing was that came to mind was with talking walls. If we're not like gonna be doing something spectacularly beautiful because we're fiscally sound, I would love to like think ahead and maybe incorporate talking walls along the bridge so that we can connect our communities together and constantly refresh it. So I think it's a great opportunity.
And incorporating art into the bridge and the approaches is something we are looking at. And we hope to even engage maybe some Sunset High School students to see what ideas they may have.
Lovely. I used to live over there kind of by HMT and Walker and everything. And so the Sunset students would always run down Murray into our neighborhoods to HMT. So I know this bridge would just be perfect for them. My last question was, do we know what the boundary changes? Does that affect, the kids' commutes and everything with the high school boundary redoing, all that kind of stuff? I just wasn't sure if anybody had looked at that.
We do have someone from Sunset High School that is attending meetings and we're sharing information with. And
Okay.
I think there still will be some students to the south, but I'll make a note to raise that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Wendy?
Thank you. Janine, thank you for the presentation. This is such an exciting project, and it's been a while while we've been waiting for this to come about. So this is really super. You alluded a little to the funding, and my question was, will this project in any way be impacted at all with the failure of the Metro Transportation measure?
That's a hard one to answer because there was no guarantee that we would have received funding from that measure. We are still looking to the Nature and Trails bond, the trails portion, whether it's for the bridge or some of those connecting paths. And given that we're a few years away from construction, hopefully Metro and the region can use the work that it did. If there's a Washington County specific, but if not, we have already started talking to our delegation about the bridge several years ago.
Great, thank you. And I encourage us to continue that because that's a huge connectivity piece. And I also wanted to speak to Tia's suggestion for art, and if we could include on the list metal art.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Heidi?
Well, piggybacking on Wendy, Wendy got a couple of my questions answered. Thank you again, Janine. It is so exciting. Just thinking about the additional sources of funding and where that may come from, if there is a need for us to be speaking with our delegation, you know, at the local or state level to let us know, because I know there'll be quite a bit of interest for folks with that, and we're happy to help with that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Tia, do you have anything else?
No, I just forgot to put my hand down.
That's okay. Felicita, anything?
No, just thank you, Janine, and I'm excited as we continue on this journey, and I'm thankful that we were still able to prioritize and continue to prioritize community feedback, and one day we'll get to see this happen. I'm excited.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. I just have one question, Janine, and it's kind of a little bit more about like our broader approach to being part of this kind of trail system, right? And a huge part of this, or a benefit of this bridge, right, is the commuter opportunities. And so I'm curious, like, what is our strategy around like lighting our trails, right? So like, do we actually light them during like commuter hours so that when there's a big connection like this, right, like people will safely be able to navigate those commuter trails?
Lighting the bridge is something we will definitely be investigating throughout this process because it is a safety matter. And I used to live on the south side of the bridge that connects to the Sunset Transit Center and use that, and lighting was important. In the past, we have not used lighting along our trails for several reasons, but when Keith and I were talking about updating our parks functional plan and in the future the trails functional plan, where they are commuter routes, we would like to try to. It does get challenging being in the BPA right of way with what we can put. And we also need to be sensitive where it's either through a natural area because of wildlife, but also sensitive where these trails, which is many of them, are in people's backyards. So it's finding that balance, and we'll be looking at best practices when it comes time to update the trails functional plan and see what we can incorporate even advance of that with the bridge design.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Janine. Okay, are there any other questions? Felicita.
I love working with women because women talk about safety. And that's really, really important. And I'm really glad that came up, and working with so many women means that we can have a really healthy and necessary conversation about this. So maybe this is a future work session. Maybe I'll submit an idea to the parking lot, because I everything that Janine says, she's spot on. Is like, this is not an easy topic, and I would love for us to discuss further in the future.
And we do have conversations with the city and county ongoing about lighting trails. That's more in the context when they're parallel to a roadway. So it's something that's getting attention.
Awesome. Yeah, and our board doesn't shy away from hard topics, so awesome future topics. Okay, that was our final agenda item. Doug, do you have, oh, Wendy, please.
Sorry, I just had two quick questions that I assume come under the GM's report, and I just kind of wanted to wait until, you know, we were finished, but I could ask them now and then whatever. I think they're probably pretty simple.
Yep, sorry, and I jumped the gun. We're not done. We're just done with general manager's report, so please do ask your questions. Thank you.
One was based on reading the packet, the Tualatin Valley Trail TAC meeting. I just wondered if there was any update to that. And the second question I had was, I noticed the SDC net receipts are we under expectation to date, or was I misreading that? So thank you.
Maybe Janine, you can hit those.
I'll start with the second question first. We are anticipating that SDC collections are going to be lower. COVID, especially in the beginning when we had the shutdown, that did impact building. What we're hearing from the city of Beaverton and the county is that it's more normal, but still a little low. So next month, I will be bringing you an updated 5-year capital improvement plan, and that will include revised forecasts. Yeah, unfortunately, we're seeing a bit of a slowdown. With the first question, we'll have more of an update next month on the Tualatin Valley Trail. Staff will be attending the Washington County Planning Commission. They're having an update on this next week, so we'll learn a little more as that project moves forward. And we'll keep you updated as we are participating in the Technical Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Any other questions on the GM report before we move on to new business? Okay, thank you. All right. And new business, updated system development charges administrative procedures guide.
Janine's got this one. It was I did see a smile, I think, on her face right away when you were hoping maybe the meeting was done, but actually this is a review topic. So again, we can take as much input as the board would like initially, and then we're open to obviously receiving calls or emails with additional updates, because this will go through another refinement process before it comes back formally for the board for adoption. But with that, Janine.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought you were forgetting about me, or maybe just had enough of SDCs.
No,
but
I knew you were the last agenda item as well, and so I just looked at the bottom, and so I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on the update of the Administrative Procedures Guide. We have some updates that are necessary to implement the new methodology that you adopted this evening, but also we do like to look at these, I'll call them the APGs, on a regular basis, because we do have lessons learned as we are working both on our own development and with developers. So the first question is, what is the APG? And these are our procedures, what staff uses to implement and administer the district's SDC charges for new development in the district. And I'm going to take a brief second for some bragging rights. We updated this 4 years ago. It was one of the first big tasks that I had undertaken at the district. It took me a while because I had to wrap my head around everything. But when we hired Deb Ghilardi to update our methodology, one of the first things she said is she uses our APG as an example of how to administer your SDCs. So next slide, please. I'm going to give you some high-level outline on the major updates to the APG this go around. One is definitions. We've had some confusion on accessory dwelling units because the city and the county define them a little differently. So we have our definition, and then I put in a catch-all that to defer to the city or the county, whoever is implementing, because they are the jurisdictions that collect our fees. We also needed to make changes to definitions to single family and multifamily housing. As I mentioned during the methodology hearing, single family will now be any dwelling unit that is detached. Multifamily has changed from just apartments and condominiums and triplexes and above to include row houses, townhomes, duplexes. And again, this is very important given the state and the region's effort with that missing middle housing. With that now being multifamily, that type of housing sees a $3,000 reduction in their SDC fees, and hopefully will encourage more of that type of housing. We've changed the index that we are going to be using for our annual adjustment. We had been using the Seattle index in the past, which has big corporations such as Boeing. So we've gone to the multi-city. This is consistent with what other park agencies are using. And we're also changing from using the November index to, and it's the engineering news report, to the annual average. And that's because there is great fluctuation from month to month. And while there was logic to why we picked November with having the adjustment effective January, my example is last year, November had a 0.8% increase in construction cost. The month before it was 13%. So it really did not allow us to keep up with the cost of rising construction. With the next slide, I'll talk about affordable housing. So there is a new section for to implement our affordable housing policy. And this is where, to all our board members, and especially Wendy, I heard you loud and clear. So the first subsection in there directs staff to continue to seek public open space and affordable housing developments. One thing we've learned with working with one of our affordable housing developer, and I will be adding this in for when we bring this for approval in January, is to make it clear that we will first apply credits that are given for providing public open space, and then we will go to waivers, and that will give us something for our money first and get that mutual benefit. Again, hearing the board very clearly, we are now going to be required to give a board an annual accounting, both on the number and value of the waivers given in a year and a running total, so that we are both showing the board and our public how much waivers are, how many waivers we are granting. This will be tied in with the grant reporting that we bring every August. We've also in this policy spelled out the requirements for eligibility for waivers. Yes, thank you. That's what I have for that one. So next slide, please. And the final major update is to section 7. This section spells out how we work with developers. The memorandum of understanding that we enter into with developers is an ever-changing document. We learn from every project. You see here on the bottom is photos of different developer projects in different stages from planning to opening. So one thing to note, because there is the statewide ongoing discussion about SDCs, is this section recognizes that the district gives more credits than it's required to under law. And we do this because we want to encourage developers to build the amenities that are within their communities. They get open sooner, and there's value for everyone. We've, in looking at this, in addition to tightening certain things down, we've added benefits for both the developers and to us. For the developers, we are making our first choice using third-party estimators. This is a benefit for developers because we have the third-party estimators estimate our cost of building that amenity. And typically there is a savings with the developer doing it because they don't have to comply with the BOLI wages that we do. And they're also mobilized. They're already in the field. So that's a benefit to them. It's a benefit to us because, again, we want to encourage these amenities going in and those SDCs being spent where they would have been collected. And then on our part, what we're finding is sometimes our design and development project managers are spending more time managing a developer project than if we had done it on our own. So if we go beyond a certain point, we will have the ability to recoup that extra project management time. So that's what I have for a presentation. Our next steps is some developers wanted a longer opportunity to look at Section 7. So we'll be working to get additional feedback and then coming to you in January for approval of the revisions. This approval will allow us to implement the new fees and hopefully have a better working relationship with our partners. And I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Janine. Wendy?
Thank you. Janine, first of all, this is a really good, helpful directive. You know, I mean, I think that this really benefits all of us, people who, staff, board members, the public, developers, people who will live in these wonderful places that we are building. So I want to thank you for that. And I wanted to thank you especially for including your section 6F1 and 6F5, which are the public open space and the annual reporting. I wanted to thank you very much for that. And I only had two questions. They both have to do with definitions. One is, I wondered where the definition might be for affordable housing, and if we shouldn't have something in there since we are dealing with a very specific policy. And that would be one. And the other is on the one that's the SDC capital improvement project list. I think it needs something. It says the district, and I think it should be the district something that identifies. So I don't know whether there's just a word that's not there, but could somebody maybe just check that? Other than that, my congratulations on a really good guide.
Thank you. And I opened up the guide and the PDF is showing blank. I will look at affordable housing, that definition, because I had that thought. And when we come back in January, I will make a note to show you how that is covered.
Thank you.
Wendy, what was the second thing you asked? I was also looking at the document
And
I missed the second one.
It's in the definitions and it's under SDC capital improvements. I'm sorry, capital improvement projects list. And let me see if I can find it really quickly. Again, I had it. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you? I will attempt to find it, but I don't want to hold everybody up here.
You said you thought there needed to be a word after district, but I think it might just be kind of hard to see in the red lines. It does say it means the district adopted by resolution.
And that may be just fine because the lines were a little not even with the copy that I'm looking at. So it just appeared that I was missing a word. So
or maybe like the district list, right? I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Great. Yeah. Thank you, Janine. It was, I was thoroughly impressed at just how, for such a complex document, how accessible you made it reading it. It wasn't something I had to read repeatedly to understand. And I think that that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
If I could add to Ashley, the complexity of these working documents they're all about the relationships that Janine has with both the development side and the home builders side, and transparency, and really showing them that we want a workable document. And the last thing any of us need is, things that could have been said out loud but weren't said when we have an opportunity. So it may seem like a substantial amount of changes here. The real world is this document is a live document. It's evolving, and these updates are really appropriate. They actually give us the tools by which to manage the projects appropriately, to use the funds as best that can be for the public's good.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we have come to the end of our agenda. Is there anything else, Doug, that we need to cover before we adjourn?
Nope, we're all good.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time, for your thoughtfulness. Our meeting is adjourned. We will see you next month.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ashley.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.